this.
One question.
Mhm.
Is there any teacher of thinkers in Panama? For
Right
my
now,
own, for my uncle.
there's nobody who lives in Panama.
No, no leads.
No what?
Like, is here like I don't know teaching?
Not right now.
Uh,
Uh,
I hope my uncle was here.
no, he was in the office today.
Uh, you should tell him to answer my calls.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay. David,
Yes.
what we're trying to do here with this graph is to switch over from the short run idea to the long run idea. Okay, do you remember what short run was?
Yes.
Okay, it's where our labor is going to be variable, okay, but our capital is going to be fixed.
Six.
Okay, what about in the long run?
In the long run, a variable is
No. In a
both.
long enough time period, okay,
Okay,
labor
the
is going to be
capital
variable.
and the capital is variable.
Yeah, okay, so we're able to change up the amount of factories that we are looking at, right? Okay,
Yes.
but remember in econ, when we look at models, we try to make it as simple as possible. So there was that idea of ceteris paribus, which just means we're only looking at one thing changing at a time. Okay, so for our models, it's a lot easier to think about the short run because capital we could just ignore, okay, and we're just going to change around how many workers we have. Okay, but in the long run, it gets a little bit more difficult because both of these guys are changing at the same time. Okay, so the way we did it was we actually used a little cheat. Okay, we used a little shortcut. Okay, we thought about all these different short run ideas. Okay, and when we added them all up together, that's how we came up with the long run. Okay, what I mean by that is in the short run, we have our ATC curve, average total cost. Okay, but we come up with that because labor is going to be variable, but capital is going to be fixed. But what we're going to do now is, in the long run, we're going to assume that we have a whole bunch of different fixed capitals that we could think of. Okay, here's our ATC curve when our labor is variable, but our capital is fixed at one factory. Here's another ATC curve where our labor is variable, but our capital is fixed at two factories. Okay, and then here's 3 factories, here's 4 factories, here's 5 factories. So what we did is we're taking a look at short run average total cost curves, but we're looking at a whole bunch of them with all different types or different levels of fixed capital. Okay, so again, here's our ATC with 1 factory, here's 2 factories, here's 3 factories, here's 4 factories, and here's 5 factories. Each one of those guys is going to have their separate ATC curve. But then what we're going to do is we're going to look at all of them together. Okay? The basic idea always is we want to do things at low cost. We want to do whichever one is the cheapest. Okay? So we don't want to be using 3 factories when 1 factory is enough. Okay? Or we don't want to be using 2 factories when we're producing so much that we're going to have to fill it with labor. Okay? Maybe if we're producing a lot, 2 factories is not a good idea. Maybe it's a good idea to have 3 or 4 or 5 factories. Okay, so all we're trying to do is we're trying to pick our level of factories, pick our level of capital that's going to keep our costs as low as possible. David, does that basic idea make sense?
Yes.
Okay, then what we're going to do, if we take a look at all of that together, okay, then if this is what our short run ATC curve looks like, then in the long run, it has the same general shape, but it's going to be much more spread out. Here's our long run average cost. That again is where our labor is going to be variable. Okay, and our capital is going to be variable as well. We're able to change up both our number of workers and our number of factories. And this is when we start talking about scale. You're only able to scale, okay, when you're able to increase both of your inputs together. Okay? In the short run, you're not able to scale because your capital is fixed. In the long run, you are able to scale. Okay? And when you scale, there's going to be 3 distinct regions or 3 areas of your long run average cost. Okay, one area is what we call economies of scale. On the other end, we have diseconomies of scale. And exactly in the middle, we have something known as constant returns to scale. Okay? Easy way to think about that is in each one of these different regions, think to yourself, is it better to be bigger or is it better to be smaller? Okay? In this first little region of economies of scale, what's better for my company? Q1 or Q2? Now think to yourself, by better for your company, just think of which one is cheaper on average for my company, producing Q1 units or producing Q2 units. Here's the long run average cost for Q1. It's extremely high. And here's the average cost for Q2. It's relatively low. So in economies of scale, it's actually better to be bigger. It's better to produce a lot. Okay? Because as you produce more, you know what? As you produce more, your total cost will go up, but your average cost will start going down. Okay, I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Okay, with constant returns to scale, it really doesn't matter. Okay, whether at Q3 or Q4, your average cost is not changing by all that much. Okay, so here, it really doesn't matter if you're producing a lot or producing a little. With diseconomies of scale, what's happening here is you're already producing such a large amount. Okay, take a look at Q5. Already that's a huge amount. Okay, so what happens is from Q5, if you decide to produce more, okay, what's going to happen is your average cost is going to go super, super high. Okay, the reason for that is you're going from a big production to an even bigger production. What's going to start to happen is a lot of mismanagement. Your company is getting so big, okay, that it's very difficult to figure out what each little person is doing. Okay, it's very difficult to figure out how much each factory is producing because you have so many factories all around the world. Okay. Now, a lot of economists feel like there is no diseconomies of scale. Okay. Think about companies like McDonald's or Starbucks or Google or Apple. They're huge. Okay, and even for those companies, we don't really see diseconomies of scale. Okay, as they keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, well, the management just keeps on getting better and better and better as well. Okay, so some economists believe that diseconomies of scale, we don't really see that all too much. Okay, the really interesting part is this guy, the economies of scale. If you look at the region of economies of scale, what's happening to your long run average cost as your quantity increases? It's going down. Okay, let's think about why that is. Oh, here it is. Okay, so at this quantity Q1, your average cost is really, really high. At this quantity Q2, your average cost is very, very low. Okay, so one way that you see this all the time, okay, is with something called a natural monopoly. Anybody? Do you guys know what a monopoly is?
Um, mm, I don't know how to explain.
Try it.
It's like a place,
Mhm.
like when a lot of companies together create a huge like empire of like money and business.
Yeah, okay. A lot of companies or all the companies together, okay, and they're all working together. Okay, so the consumers, they don't have a choice. All right. So that group, or in this case, for a pure monopoly, it's just one company. If there's only one company selling a product, that means if you want to buy it, you have to buy it from that one company. Okay, what do you think is going to happen to the price?
It's going to go up.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely high because that company knows if you want to buy it, you have to buy it from me. I'm sure you guys have played Monopoly before, the board game.
Yes.
Okay, so the reason why that's a monopoly is what you're trying to do is you're trying to gobble up all the property. You're trying to be the only landowner who owns everything. And if you own everything, then if people want to buy a house or if they want to buy a property, there's only one person to buy it from. Okay? And what you're going to do is cause the rent to be extremely, extremely high. Okay? So monopolies, in terms of economics, are really, really bad. Okay? It's going to hurt the consumers. It's going to make it so that prices are ridiculously high. But when we have
But the company is
economies,
going to win a lot of money.
yeah, okay, and the consumers, the buyers are going to be hurt. Okay, imagine a situation where, screw it. Okay, let's say for cell phones, let's say all the other companies went out of business, and the only company selling cell phones is going to be Apple. What do you think is going to happen to Apple's profits?
You're going to go from 3 billion
Yeah, okay,
to 4 billion.
but what's going to happen to consumers' surplus? What's going to happen to consumers' utility? What's going to
They're
happen
going
to?
to
Mhm.
they're going to lose a lot of money because there is no cheaper phones for them, and that's the only one that they can
Yeah,
afford.
okay. So for all these people, if they want to buy a cell phone, they have to buy from Apple. And of course, the price is going to be stupid high. Okay. So that's why we like to see Apple competing against Google, competing against Samsung, competing against, who else is there? Motorola or
Samsung.
something like that. Okay. We need a lot of competition. Okay. But sometimes we have something known as a natural monopoly. Okay, and a natural monopoly happens because of economies of scale, what we're talking about here, where it's better to be bigger. Think about this situation. Okay, in Panama right now, how many
Hmm.
electricity companies do you have?
I don't know.
Usually in a city, there's only one. There's only one place, only one company that you could buy electricity from. Okay, and the reason why that is because that company is a natural monopoly. Okay, now think about an electricity company. First thing they need to do is find an energy source. Let's say for my little electricity company, okay, it's coming from a river. Okay, and then what I need to do is I need to build a factory right next to that river. Okay, and I need to build some turbines. There's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of capital that needs to be built. Okay, so I build my factory, and then what I need to do is I need to set up the infrastructure. I need to go all around town, and I need to set up those electricity poles. Man,
There's
already
what?
that's costing me a huge amount of money. Have I sold anything yet?
No.
No. Still, I need to spend money on infrastructure. I need to go around and put wires everywhere across the city. Man, that's costing a lot of money. Now, what happens if I do all of that? I do all of that investment, and then I set up one house and only one house.
You're
Does that
going
make
to lose
sense?
a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay. So what that does is that means my total cost. Okay.
Will be
Maybe it was something
much
like
higher
$1
than the
trillion.
profit.
It was a ridiculous amount of money. But if I use all that money, if I invest all that money and set up this company and I hook up one house and only one house, then my average cost is going to be stupid high, ridiculously high. It's going to be $1 trillion of total cost spread out over one quantity, one house. That doesn't make sense. Okay? So for me to even think about setting up this company, what I need to do is expect to set up every single house, okay, all around town, all around the city. That's the only way that I could bring this $1 trillion worth of total cost. The only way I could bring that down, okay, so that the average cost is relatively low. Make sense? So for this type
Yes.
of company where it takes a lot of investment, a lot of upfront money, it doesn't make sense to have that small quantity because your average cost is going to be it's going to be ridiculously high. It makes much more sense after you spend all that money on infrastructure, okay, to sell a lot of quantity. And that way, even though your total cost is really, really high, your average cost is going to be very, very low because you're spreading it out amongst a big, big quantity. Now, the reason why we call that a natural monopoly is as soon as one company is there, company one, okay, just the fact that that company is there, it's blocking any other company from even thinking about joining this industry. So let's say because they're the only electricity company, company one here is earning tons and tons of economic profit. So the thing about economic profit is that's a reason for another company to want to join. So let's say company two is thinking about building their own electricity company. Can they use company one's factory?
Oh,
Hell no. So what they need to do is spend a whole lot of money to build their own factory, company number two.
and
Okay.
that costs a lot of money, so they don't do it because it's risky.
Wait, can I just use company one's infrastructure?
No.
No. Okay. So what company two needs to do is do the same thing. They need to go around town and spend a whole crap load of money, okay, setting up all that infrastructure. And then they need to connect all the wires. And then after spending all that money, and it's probably going to be somewhere close to $1 trillion again. Now what they need to do is they need to split the market with company one. Okay, so they can't expect to get as many customers as company one. They can't get all of those guys. So the best they could hope to do is maybe split the market in half. But if they split the market in half, what happens is maybe the quantity is so low that the average total cost is really, really high. And maybe the average total cost is so high that they're not able to earn a profit. So the way this industry, that this market works, is it's only profitable for one company to gobble up the entire market. It doesn't make sense to have a lot of companies competing against each other because the average total cost will be so high that nobody's going to be earning a profit. That's why
Because
in
then no
Panama
one.
City, you don't see like 5 or 6 different electricity companies that you're able to choose from. There's only one. And all the customers in that city have to buy electricity from that one company.
Okay.
Reina, I know you're a little bit late. Does that kind of sort of make sense?
Kind of. Sorry for being late. The Wi-Fi in my house went down.
It's okay. Yael, is that making sense?
Yes.
And Jackie is watching Monday Night Football.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Believe me, I will watch it.
Okay. David, more questions?
It's understanding.
Sorry, what was your question?
What, my question?
Uh-huh.
No, nothing. I was like going to say,
Mhm.
so you could not have many electricity companies because then both companies will lose money.
To the point
Instead
where
of
both companies
gaining.
would go out of business, and then this city would have no electricity whatsoever. So it only makes sense for one big company to survive. Okay, this is something that we call first mover advantage. I'll jot it down here. First mover advantage.
What would natural monopoly be in simple terms?
A situation where one huge company would make more sense than two smaller companies, which is what we
Okay.
see here with electricity. Okay, so this electricity industry is a natural monopoly. Okay, that's why you'll only see one large electricity producer. Okay, now we understand the problem with the monopoly. That's going to cause prices for the consumers to be ridiculously high. Okay, and we understand that we don't want people to pay huge prices for electricity because that means, a lot of people won't be able to afford it and maybe they're going to suffer somehow. Okay, so a lot of the times what happens is the government steps in. The government understands that this is a natural monopoly, but they don't want this natural monopoly to be taking advantage of people. So sometimes what the government does is they gobble up that natural monopoly. They buy up the company. Okay, that's why you see a lot of things like electricity or water or sewage or trash collection or taxi services or all that kind of stuff. Okay, those are what we call public utilities. And what does public mean?
For everyone.
For everyone, okay? Public just means it's
For
owned by
everyone.
the government. Okay? So the government, when they're running these public utilities like electricity, the government is not in it for the profit. The government is just there to make
People.
sure that as many people are getting this electricity as possible without the company going bankrupt. Okay? So they're going to turn this into sort of like a non-profit organization. Okay? It's not for the profit. They're just going to do it so as many people have electricity as possible. If this was a private company, okay, if this was just a company trying to maximize their profits, of course they're going to screw a lot of people. They're going to cause prices to be so high that not everybody is going to get electricity, but everyone who does is going to pay a ridiculously high price.
I have a question. Why would the government even want to help the people if they're not getting any profit in their benefits?
So this company, if it is a public utility, a government company, okay, it's not going to be in it for the money. They just want to give as much of this as possible. Okay, I mean, you kind of have to see that as the role of government. Okay, the government is out there to help the people, or at least on paper they are. Okay, but again, where's the government going to get all this money together to provide all this infrastructure and all that kind of stuff?
From the people.
From
From
the
the people,
taxes.
from the taxes.
True.
So I know it's weird, but they're just taking money from people and they're giving them back a service that they need. Okay, so it's sort of like, I mean, the people could have paid for it themselves. Actually, no, the rich people could have paid for it, okay, but the poor people couldn't have. Okay, so this is another one of those Robin Hood policies. Okay, you're kind of taking money away from the rich people and using it to kind of help out the poor people. Okay, again, it's just sort of the job of government. This is what they do. Okay, good. So that's our discussion about a natural monopoly. It happens in the economies of scale portion of our long-run average cost. Okay. Now, the easiest way to remember that is always think about the electricity company as the perfect example of a natural monopoly. And that's it. Okay. We're done with our different cost curves. Perfect. Okay. So very quick. Which one is that?
Fixed. Total fixed cost.
So which one is that?
Average fixed cost.
Perfect. What's that?
That's the total cost. No, that's the total
Variable cost.
Variable cost because it's starting at the origin. So what's that?
There's two. It can
average variable cost. Or it could be average
because
total.
it's the same color. Okay, it could be average total cost. Okay, but if I draw this, you know that this is overall total cost, which means this one will be the average total cost. Which one am I missing?
Or your marginal cost.
Nike sign, right? Ooh, did I draw that correctly?
Correct. It has to intersect here and here.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Good. It has to go through the minimums. Okay? Good catch. All right? So there's my overall marginal cost. Perfect. Okay? Now we're going to get started with market structures. This is pretty much the major part of microeconomics. Everything we've done until now has been leading up to this point. Okay, so there's a lot of different market structures that we could talk about. We could talk about monopolies, we could talk about oligopolies. The place we always start is something known as perfect competition. Now think about what that means. Perfect competition. Okay, this is going to be our perfect example of what our economy, what every single industry should look like. This is what we want it to look like in order to maximize efficiency and to make sure that things are as fair as possible. Every company out there, they would love to be a monopoly because that way they could cheat the people and they could earn tons and tons of economic profit. But for society, we would love it if all the firms we're perfectly competitive. So where we start is with all the different assumptions, all the different characteristics of perfect competition. We have that on this end of the spectrum here. All the way on the other side, we're going to have a monopoly. Mono, okay, where there's only one company. Just like we talked about with the electricity company. Okay, you understand that's going to be great for the company, but it's going to be bad for the consumers. Okay, perfect competition is going to be great for the consumers, great for society. It's actually going to be not all too great for the companies. Okay, we'll see this in a second. Okay, but the companies in perfect competition will be earning zero economic profit. Doesn't sound good, huh? Okay, but remember, does zero economic profit mean these companies are earning nothing at all?
No.
Ooh, with zero economic profit, how much are they earning?
0.
How much?
0.
It's still the accounting profit, but
Oh,
that doesn't
nice.
really count.
Okay. If companies are earning zero economic profit, that means that they're just earning back their opportunity cost. They do have accounting profit. They are earning some money. They are putting some money in the bank. Okay. But it's just their opportunity cost. What that means is they're earning the same amount here as they could be at their next best alternative. Okay? So they're not extremely happy. They're just satisfied. They're okay with the situation. Okay? So don't feel bad for these companies in perfect competition. They are earning zero economic profit, but that's okay. All right? And then a little bit later on, we'll talk about the middle cases. Monopolistic competition, which you could kind of see as a mix between monopoly and perfect competition. Okay, and then we'll have something known as an oligopoly. Okay, all of these guys are going to be super fun. Trust me. Okay. All right, so we're going to start in with the perfect example of what an industry should be like. Perfect competition. Okay, and this is a situation where you have a lot of companies and they're competing against each other. And in economics, what do we mean if companies are competing against each other? How do two companies compete?
They sell the same product.
Let's say they
at
sell the
different
same.
prices.
And the one who is better quality,
Mhm.
like it's more biased. They fight for who will have more efficiency.
All about efficiency, not because they want to be efficient, it's because they want the profit. Okay, and they realize that the only way to get the profit is to force yourself to be as efficient as possible. Okay, if you have companies that are wasting a lot, or if you have company with lazy workers, they're not going to be able to compete against those other companies. So they're going to be losing out, and they're going to be driven out of the market. They're going to go bankrupt. They're going to go out of business. And that's the great thing about perfect competition. Okay, it makes sure that only the good companies remain. So let's go through some of these characteristics. Now, again, this is the perfect example of what a company or a industry, a market should look like. The only problem with this is it's a little bit too perfect. It's a little bit too ideal. Okay, to the point where it's not very realistic. You won't see this in real everyday life. It's a concept. It's a theory. Okay, but it's a good starting point. We get to see what an industry should be like, and then later on we'll talk about what industries actually look like. Okay, so first of all, with perfect competition, you need to have many buyers. Well, that makes sense. A lot of consumers, a lot of people buying that stuff. And here's the thing: you need to have many sellers. Okay, you need to have a lot of companies selling these products. By the way, what do you call it if you have one seller, one company?
Monopoly.
Monopoly.
Yeah. So this is the exact opposite of a monopoly. You have a lot of companies. So many companies you can't even count. Okay? Now here's the thing. Because there's so many companies, no one company can affect the market price. What that means is, let's say you have 100,000 companies, a lot of companies. Okay? And what happens if one of those companies decides to increase their price a little bit? Why would that not work?
No one
Because
will buy it.
Yeah,
others that have a fixed price.
good. Okay? There's so many other companies selling it at a lower price that no one is going to buy it from that one company that increased their price. Same thing with the buyers though. There's so many consumers, there's so many buyers. Let's say there's 1 million people who want to buy this product. And what happens if one of these people says, nope, I want to pay a lower price? Well, that's not going to work either, okay? Because the companies realize, I don't need to sell it to you. There's so many other consumers I could sell it to. So no one company could affect market price, and no one consumer could affect market price either. What that means is, whatever market price is, let's say a P star, that's what it's going to be. No one could change that. Okay? So, first
Oh.
characteristic, many, many buyers and many, many sellers. David, do you have a
How
question?
about him?
Mhm.
Yeah. Why this company decides to lower the prices more than every other company? Well, what will happen?
That happens all the time, okay? And this is what we mean by competing, okay? My company wants more customers than your company. Only way to do that is I'm going to start lowering my price a little bit. Well, if I do that, that's going to cause you to lower your price a little bit too, right? So we're going to keep on bringing down prices and bringing down prices until
You
we go out of
cannot bring it
business.
more down until you go until a price.
Between the price and the demand.
Yeah. Until we can't bring it down anymore. Okay? Until we meet the demand curve, until we realize that if we lower our prices any more than it is right now, we're going to be making losses, and then we're going to have to leave the industry. You guys have the basic idea. Good. Okay? So there's our first major characteristic, many buyers and many sellers. Our second one, our firms produce a homogeneous product, a homogeneous good. Anybody out there? Wild guess. What do you think homogeneous means?
The same.
Same. Okay? I'm not talking about similar. I'm not talking about they're kind of sort of the same. I'm talking about exactly the same. So every single every single company out there, all of those 100,000 companies, they sell exactly the same product. No difference whatsoever. Does that make sense in today's world?
No.
No. Okay, I can't think of a
it's
single
impossible.
product, okay, where we have a homogeneous good. What if we're talking about bottles of water?
Yes, it can happen, but
Where?
okay, the water of one company, the water.
I mean, water is water, right? But as soon as I put Avion on my label, okay, and another company puts Perrier on their water, ooh, now they're slightly different, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So in
Or you
today's
could do it with
what?
With Coca-Cola. You could do it with
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
Ooh, Coca-Cola, that's a brand. Okay.
Coca-Cola
So I have
and Pepsi.
Coca-Cola and I have Pepsi Cola. Are those the same?
No.
No, those are
No.
heterogeneous goods now. The only place I could kind of sort of maybe see this happening is with agriculture. Okay? Because what's
We
that?
can say with the gasoline also.
Or with products that are natural. Like,
Even with gasoline, okay? I'm sure that you guys in Panama have a lot of different gas stations, right?
yes.
Yeah, why do some people decide to go to some
Yes.
gas stations and not others?
Yes,
I know
but
some
it-
people who drive around looking for gas and they see something and they're like, oh, don't want to go to that gas station.
okay, the price.
Maybe it's not just about the price. Maybe it's something like, oh, I know that this company has slightly better gas than this other company.
Or quality.
Yeah. So anytime you have quality differences, that's not perfect competition. They need to be exactly the same. So think about here's Bob's carrot, okay, and here's Tom's carrot. Okay, we have two different farmers producing carrots. Maybe this could be perfect competition because a carrot is a carrot is a carrot, right?
Yeah.
Well, even here, what happens if Bob is just a better farmer than Tom?
The quality of the carrot.
Yeah. So even this. So this is where we have to be doing assumptions. Assume that we're talking about a homogeneous good. Okay, maybe in real life it doesn't happen this way, but just assume for now, just so we could set up this theory, so we could set up this model, just assume that they're exactly the same. Okay, again, not even similar, there's going to be no difference at all. Okay, and each product from each company is going to be a perfect substitute for another company. They're all exactly the same. And this is the way that competition works. Uh, David, you were mentioning before, they're going to be competing by lowering their prices, right? Well, that
Yes.
only makes sense if they're all selling exactly the same product. Because if Bob knows that his
Yes.
carrot is better than Tom's, does he need to lower the price?
No.
No, because he knows that people
He
are
might-
going to buy his carrot even though it's a little bit more expensive. We don't have that in perfect competition. In perfect competition, they all sell exactly the
Everything's the
same.
same.
Good. That's number one and number two. Number three, there's no barriers to entry or exit. That means new companies could join this industry whenever they want to, and existing companies could leave this industry whenever they want to. Now think about this. Why would a new company decide to join this carrot market?
Because
Because
People
they
back-
have many buyers, and then
they're gonna have like there's not gonna be
they see a big opportunity
For what?
for profit.
There you go. It all happens for profits. Okay? If profits are positive, meaning, let's say I'm a businessman and I'm looking around the industry, I'm thinking, what sort of company should I start up? I'm looking around, and I notice that in the carrot industry, there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of farmers earning profit. You know what? I want some of that profit for myself, so I'm going to join. Now, we'll see how this works out very soon, but think about the logic. So if the carrot industry is making tons of profit, and that's causing more and more people to want to join the industry and start up their own carrot companies, eventually, what do you think is going to happen to the profit?
It's gonna go down because
Oh,
there's
the-
gonna be
Good.
much company.
Flip the story around. Let's say the carrot industry is really struggling. So there's a lot of farmers losing money. So some of those companies or some of those farmers decide, nope, don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I want to do corn, or maybe I want to start up my own Zinker's Education Institute.
They
Okay?
made
A lot of these companies are going to want to do something else, so they start leaving. If they start leaving, what do you think is going to happen to the losses of the remaining firms?
with
no, they're gonna gain more.
going to go up.
Yeah, the losses are going to go up, or the losses are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
So as more people join in,
Uh-huh.
it's gonna be worse for the people that are already in the market.
Good. And what happens if existing firms, some of them, decide to leave? What happens to the remaining firms? Does their situation get better or worse?
Better.
Yeah. Do you see how this all works? It's that invisible hand again. Okay? So when profits are positive, new firms are going to join until those profits are gone. When profits are negative, existing firms are going to leave until those losses are gone. Okay, so eventually, no matter where we start, we're always going to end up in equilibrium. We're always going to end up in a situation where profits are equal to
Each other.
0. Magic number, until they're equal to 0. If profits are positive, we're going to have entry. If profits are negative, we're going to have exit. Until finally, everything balances out, and I'm sorry to say, profits are going to equal 0. And again, don't feel bad for these people. If I say economic profits are equal to 0, that means these farmers are still earning accounting profit. They're still earning a good living. Okay? But they're just earning back their opportunity cost. They're just earning back the same amount that they could be at their next best alternative. So all that means is there's no reason for these guys to change their mind and decide to do something else. They're satisfied where they're at. Oh, you guys are doing fantastic with this. The last little characteristic here is everything taken together. The firms are going to be price takers, okay? Because there's so many companies selling exactly the same product. What that means is there's only going to be one price, one market equilibrium price for this product, okay? And whatever that market equilibrium price is, No one company and no one consumer is going to be able to change that. What if every single company out there is producing the same exact quality carrot? Okay, and the market price for that P star is something like $3 for a carrot. Well, that's pretty expensive. Okay, now what would the farmer want to do with the price?
They'd want to lower it so everybody would buy their carrot.
Actually, that's pretty good. Yeah, that actually does make sense. Okay, I was thinking the farmer would want to increase the price to earn a little bit more money per carrot.
But
Okay.
they can't.
But they can't because everybody else is selling exactly the same quality carrot for $3. So if I decided to sell it for $4, no one's going to buy it from me. If I decide to sell it for $3.10, no one's going to buy it from me. If I decide to sell it for $3.01, no one is going to buy it from me. Okay? Now here's the thing. Was it Yael or was it Reina? Who said to lower the price?
Me, Reina.
Reina, as a businesswoman, why would you decide to lower the price on your product?
Because if I lower the price and
Mhm.
everybody has a higher price, everybody's gonna buy my carrots.
Perfect. Okay. Now here's the thing. How many buyers do we have in this perfect competition?
We have a lot of buyers.
Okay. I want you to take this to the extreme. By a lot of buyers, think about infinity. Okay. You have an infinite amount of buyers. Okay. The real way to think about that is you have so many buyers that it's sort of like infinity to one company. Meaning, even if you spend all day and all night making carrot, you have
Oh,
enough
you're not gonna
customers
have
to
enough
sell to. You could
quality.
sell everything that you produce. Okay? So, the only reason to lower the price on a product is to get a few more customers. But what's a few more than infinite customers?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Okay, the only change that would happen is you'd be earning a little bit less per carrot. Okay? Good observation there. Nice. Okay? So, whatever the market price happens to be, okay, firms cannot increase that or they'll lose all their customers. And for the firms, there's no reason for them to lower the price. Okay, they already have an infinite amount of consumers at $3 each. There's no reason to lower it down to $2.50. What that shows you is whatever this market price happens to be, it's going to be fixed. It's going to be set, and no company, no consumer is going to be able to change that. Everyone is going to be a price taker. Okay? I'll give you a little bit of a preview. What do you think is going to happen to a monopoly where you're the only company selling this unique product? Are you going to be a price taker?
No.
No, you're going to be a price maker. Okay? You could set whatever price you want. Let's say
Yeah.
Apple was the only company selling smartphones. No similar products, no nothing. They're the only companies doing it. They're going to be a price maker. If they wanted to, they could sell that iPhone for $1 million. Okay?
And people would still buy it.
Yeah, some people might. Okay? They still need to make a decision though. Okay? Because they still want to maximize their profits. They don't want to make it so expensive that nobody buys it from them. Okay? We'll talk about that in a second. Okay? That's very interesting. All right. So let's talk about firm and market and how they interact with each other. Okay? This is going to be confusing for a quick minute. Okay? The reason being, whenever we model out our perfect competition, you're always going to need what's known as a side-by-side graph. You're going to be needing two graphs right next to each other. Okay? One of the graphs is going to be for the overall industry, for all the companies all together. And then right next to that, we're going to draw a graph for one small individual company. Okay? But here's the thing. If this is the overall industry, if these are all the carrot producers, then there's one small little firm. Okay? There's Bob's Farm. Okay? And what you're going to realize is Bob's Farm's quantity of carrots is nothing compared to the overall market because there's so many companies selling exactly the same carrot. Okay? So the market quantity, I like to show that as a big Q. Okay? That's the total amount of carrots that everybody in this industry is producing together. All these companies. For Bob's Farm, That's one small little company, right? So the quantity that Bob decides to produce, I'm going to call that little q. And what do you think is going to be the comparison between little q and big Q? Little q is going to be infinitesimally small compared to the big Q. Okay, I don't care if Bob is really good at producing carrots, and if he spends all day and all night producing carrots, wow, he might produce something like 1,000 carrots in a day. Well, that's great, okay? But the overall market quantity of carrots is going to be so much bigger than that that it doesn't even matter. Okay, so firm quantity is ridiculously small compared to market quantity. So what we're going to, carrots, good. We're going to draw the carrot market, and right next to that, we're going to draw the small individual carrot firm. Finally, we go back to our basic P and Q. So this is going to be the overall carrot market. From what you remember from before, what does market demand look like?
A downward slope.
What does market supply look like?
Upward.
That's it. Okay, it's that same downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply. Yeah, the basic supply and demand graph. And then we know if you leave this alone long enough, what's going to happen is it's going to equilibrate at P star, Q star. So let's say in the carrot market, our quantity is something like 1 billion carrots at a price of something like $3 per carrot. Fantastic. Everything balanced out. But here's the thing. If the market price of carrot, if everybody altogether is selling their carrots for $3, well, what about one small little firm? Let's say that this is Bob's farm. How much is Bob able to sell his carrot for?
$3.
And only $3. Okay? Again, if he tries to sell it for anything higher, no one's going to buy it from him. And there's no reason for him to sell for anything lower, because at $3, his one small farm is so small compared to the overall carrot market that he could sell as many carrots as he could possibly imagine. Okay? So for Bob's farm, there's the big P up there, the big price. But down here, I'm going to put little q. Okay? This is Bob's quantity, this small little firm's quantity. So here's the cool thing. Whatever the market price has to be. Remember, Bob is one of many, many sellers selling exactly the same homogeneous product. That means Bob has to be a price taker. So whatever that market price was, that's going to be the same price for Bob. And like you told me, at that price, he could sell as much as he wants. If he sells for a little bit higher, he loses all his customers. And there's no reason that he's going to lower his price at all. What that means is that's going to be perfectly elastic demand. Oh my dear God, we're going back to elasticity. Perfectly elastic demand looks like this. A flat line. Okay? And just to make sure that you understand that it's different than market demand, this is firm demand. I'm going to show that with a little d. So for Bob's farm, this is what his own individual demand curve looks like. What that shows you is at P star, how many quantity can he sell? An infinite amount. But what happens if Bob decides to increase price by a little bit? Then how many carrots does he sell? None. Okay, he lost that infinite demand. That shows you is price elasticity of demand is infinite, which means we have a perfectly flat demand curve, we have perfectly elastic demand. Remember, it kind of sort of looks like an E. Okay, on the flip side too, there is no reason for Bob to lower his price at all. He would not want to lower his price to $2, to $2.50, even $2.99. He would not want to sell his carrots for that much. Okay, the reason is, again, only reason you would want to lower your price is to sell a little bit more. But at $3 a carat, you could sell an infinite amount. There's no reason for you to drop the price. Okay, so that's what your individual demand curve is going to look like. Perfect. Okay, so for today, what I want you to do is understand the difference between this. What is that again?
Demand
Of what?
of carrots.
In total. All the
Okay.
carats together. Okay, this is going to be
Okay,
market demand. What about this guy here?
This is
That's an individual demand.
It's still carrots, okay, but it's just for Bob's farm. Okay, this is going to be individual firm demand. Okay, you have to be able to differentiate, separate out the two. All right, guys, fantastic job today. All right, we'll continue on with this discussion on Wednesday. Okay, think it over, and then ask me any questions you have on Wednesday. All right. Oh, by the way, before I let you guys go, you guys had a problem set last week. Did you guys finish it?
It's a PowerPoint. How do we turn it in?
It's weird, isn't it? Okay. So what I want you to do with that is draw in as many of those graphs as you remember. Okay. And then what Ben is going to do during recitation is go through every single one of those graphs and make sure you understand the logic and the rationale behind it.
Okay.
All right. So a lot of that stuff happened from like months and months ago. Make sure to review it. Okay. Go back through your notes. Use your notes to fill in those graphs. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you guys on Wednesday.